Hi, welcome to my slidecast, M.B. Williams and the Early Days of Parks Canada. My name is Alan MacEachern and I teach history at the University of Western Ontario. For the next 4 minutes and 50 seconds, I'd like to tell you about a woman who was instrumental in shaping the Canadian National Park system in the early 20th century. This is Mabel Williams. She grew up in London, Ontario, and was one of the first female students at the University of Western Ontario. She then moved to Ottawa, where she was hired by the Department of Interior to clip out newspaper articles that might be of interest. Not a great job for a university graduate, but the kind available to a young single woman of the day. She did that for a few years, but in 1911 her boss, J.B. Harkin, asked her to help him start up a new branch devoted to national parks. It was a tiny agency with a tiny budget and no clear vision for its future. The branch, the forerunner to Parks Canada, was the first in the world dedicated to national parks, which meant that there was no precedent for what it should do. The agency had considerable latitude to define national parks however it saw fit. Harkin's first job for Mabel Williams was figuring out a way to justify the park's existence to government. Williams dug through the government libraries and came up with tourism. Places like Banff and Lake Louise were attracting foreign visitors who were bringing money into Canada without taking anything away. We take the economic value of tourism as a given today, but in the 1910s this was fresh thinking, especially for a government department. Mabel Williams was soon helping draft the annual reports, speeches, and newspaper columns that made J.B. Harkin well known for promoting national parks. Harkin discovered she had a particular knack for popular writing, and in 1920 he shipped her out west to explore and write promotional material about the parks. Williams was an unlikely travel writer. She was in her 40s by this time and not the least bit outdoorsy. More than that, she had a recurring, undiagnosed illness that kept her bedridden for long periods of time throughout her entire life. At the end of her first day riding through Jasper National Park, she got off the horse and promptly fainted. But she persevered and eventually rode, hiked, and drove the national parks of Western Canada from end to end. And she wrote about what she experienced, beginning with Through the Heart of the Rockies and the Selkirks. What made her writing different from earlier parks guides or from government publications generally was that it strove for literary quality. Here's a clip of Williams herself being interviewed by her niece in 1970.
He said, "Remember, you must appeal to their emotions." He said, "I don't want you to put it in all hard facts. It's something that only emotion will stir them," he said, "to go." And that's my idea of publicity, wasn't it? And it worked.
Williams' books do more than tell what you'll see in parks. They explain what parks will do. They argue that proximity to nature brings visitors closer to God, frees them of stress, teaches them about beauty, and makes them healthier. Her books both developed and advertised a philosophy for national parks. Mabel Williams, M.B. by now, wrote all of Parks Canada's guidebooks in the 1920s, and when the agency started making films, she wrote the scripts for 50 of them. But then the Great Depression hit. The new Prime Minister, R.B. Bennett, had long opposed national parks and instituted mass layoffs at the agency. When Williams was told to fire her staff, she resigned in solidarity. What made things particularly hard was that she was close friends with Bennett's family. She even attended the opening of Parliament with Bennett's sister, writing home that Bennett, quote, perspired in gold lace and white satin trousers, cocked hat with the same grim determination with which he raises the tariff and cuts down the civil service. Williams moved to London, England in the early 1930s to start a writing career outside of parks. She co-wrote the first Empire radio broadcast on Christmas morning 1932. She helped chaperone Grey Owl on a tour of England, but she got very little writing accomplished. In the decades to come, she researched books on a wide variety of topics but never completed them. About the only projects she did finish were on parks. In 1936, she published Guardians of the Wild, the first history of national parks in Canada. In the 1940s, she compiled and published J.B. Harkin's papers and reworked some of her old guidebooks. It was as if only when working on the parks that she found the passion to see things through. Okay, so what? What does it all mean? Why should you care? Well, I like M.B.'s story because it has that Peggy Olson feeling of a woman in a time of limited opportunities making for herself an unexpected, interesting career. And I think it works against the standard history of parks in Canada, that J.B. Harkin built the park system single-handedly. I also like that Williams walked into her job not knowing a thing about national parks and left being one of their greatest defenders. I think that says something about these places and the ideas that developed around them.